are you both right now? Just as like a few people are signing on.
Yeah.
We are out on Long Island in Copaig.
Oh, okay, great. Very cool.
Yeah.
My family actually has a house in Copaig Harbor.
Oh,
Oh,
really?
that's where we are.
We're on East Drive.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. We're on Shore Drive. Shore
Okay.
Drive South.
That's, I think, yeah, that's
The
like
other-
we're 2 blocks away.
Yeah, oh my gosh, that's so funny.
All right, so when you come over, we're the last house on East Drive.
On the right.
Like, if you go past us, you're in the ocean.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that's so nice. Yes, I'll definitely see you guys around. That's so funny.
Hopefully we'll be able to have people over this summer.
Exactly. You'll have to just drive over and wave if nothing else.
Okay, let's see. Okay, we have 24 participants. I think we can get started. So thank you everyone for coming tonight. We have a really exciting presentation today. Tonight we're hosting Doccupation founders, Dr. Eric Studley and Dr. Ivy Peltz, to discuss preparation for employment. Dr. Eric Studley is the president and CEO of Eric S. Studley and Associates, an insurance brokerage firm specializing in the insurance and financial planning needs of dentists. He recently retired from NYU College of Dentistry, where he served as an associate clinical professor, directing a group practice and the practice management program and the ergonomics program in the Department of Cardiology and Comprehensive Care. A respected speaker in the dental and insurance communities, Dr. Studley has lectured throughout the country on the subjects of insurance planning, risk and practice management, ergonomics, ethics, wellness, and case acceptance. Dr. Ivy Peltz is an experienced and accomplished general dentist treating patients in New York City. Dr. Peltz graduated from NYU College of Dentistry and currently serves as a group practice director and clinical associate professor. She is a fellow of the New York Academy of Medicine, the Pierre Fauchard Academy, and the American College of Dentists, and a master in the Academy of General Dentistry. So thank you so much for coming to Columbia today. We're so excited to hear what you have all planned for us. I'm going to be leaving a little bit early to a class that starts at 7:20, but you're in very good hands as the rest of our e-board is here. And thank you again for being with us tonight.
Well, it's our pleasure, and thank you for helping to arrange this.
Yes.
Both of you, Madeline and Lydia. Thank you so much. So before we get started, I do just want to mention that I want to tell you what Doccupations is, and it is an online algorithmic dental job matching service. So it matches dental job seekers with employers. In other words, when you get out of school or your residency program, hopefully, meaning hopefully you do one, then you will be looking for a job and we would like to help you. So Dr. Studley is sponsoring, through his insurance company, he is sponsoring memberships in Doccupations, and the memberships are free for you. Just go to www.doccupations.com and put in promo code ESSCARES, all capitals, and you will have a free membership that will extend past when you're done with school. So it makes sense to do that as soon as possible because we designed the profile page to help you grapple with some of the more difficult decisions that you have to make before you can start your job search. So that is part of the preparation for employment, is get yourself your membership going and start working on your profile, because it's going to help you work through some of the trickier things that you have to decide. So now what we'd like to do is start with a background with some terminology that we think you need to know before you enter the job market.
So I always like to start presentations with, everything should always be on a happy note, right?
Yes.
It's always, you should smile when that patient comes in. So you should always start, and this is about employment and their future.
Mm-hmm.
So you should all rest assured that you will be able to pay back your student loans. You will be able to find employment. The dental profession, as you may not be aware, when we all had to close, during the pandemic and not reopen until June, it was all, a really big, gloom and doom kind of feeling, for dentists. Patients aren't coming in. It's the first time that they've had to be, shut down. Upon reopening, the dental profession, it had the greatest growth, economic growth, than any other profession in the United States. It actually has been used as a barometer for pretty much the benchmark of the growth of one of the professions. So that is should make you feel very secure in the choices, that you've made. Also, U.S. World News and Business Report came out, I think it was last week. Dentistry was voted one of the top 10 professions to be in. It's always been in the top 10 for I don't know how many years. But, even through this, still voted one of the top 10 professions. So that should make you feel good. And lastly, average starting paycheck nationally for a dentist is approximately $150,000. Okay. Specialists are about $225, $250. Generalist about $150. That's a pretty good national average. We're in the city, you might see more, you might see less, different areas. Don't be surprised, that you might be able to make more money outside of the city, depending on the types of practice. And we'll talk about that.
Also, in all our years of teaching and all Dr. Studley's years of dealing with dentists in his insurance company, we have never, ever heard of someone who could not pay back their loans. So don't worry, you'll be able to pay them back. We know how overwhelming it feels. We were there too.
Right.
And don't worry, it'll get better.
Right. So sit back and enjoy the ride.
Yes.
This is, it should make you feel good.
Your job is getting through right now. And you've all lost time. So we highly encourage you to do a residency program after dental school, partially to make up for some of the time that you lost, because dentistry is a very, a lot of it is repetition, and the more it's a skill, the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. And there's no way around it. You did lose time. So you want to try to make that up in a way before you're fully responsible for the patients that you're treating.
So as you start to think about, and being whether there's D1, D2, 3s, or 4s, I think the earlier that you start to put some thought into this will give you time to, experiment.
Mm-hmm.
And try to see some of these different, opportunities that are out there. And the best time to do it is while you're in dental school. So once you, hopefully, as we mentioned, you do a residency. When you start a residency program, you will be finally paid. You will be an employee. And I'm sure so many of you have worked and you were employees, and you were a W-2, and you had taxes taken out of your paycheck.
So the W-2
right.
is the type of tax form that you have to submit to pay your income taxes.
So as a W-2, your employer will take out all the necessary taxes when they pay you. So you might be told, let's say, a gross salary of, $60,000 for the year, $5,000 a month. And then you get your check and you see that, it's short, let's say 25%. Well, that's called your net amount. So it's important to be familiar with that term, because, you might, negotiate something and you say, oh, this is what I'm getting paid. And then you realize, oh, I thought that's what I was actually, going to be able to deposit in the bank.
Right. You think you're getting $5,000 a month, and you may plan your life accordingly, especially as a new, let's say, resident. If we're talking about an employee, you get an apartment, you're leaving a certain amount for social life and food and so on, and everything that you need for school and whatever else you need. And then you find out that actually your check is about what, 2/3 of that?
Yeah. You lose
So
about, 25%,
yeah, you're taking home, let's call it 3,800 or
Right.
something like that instead of the 5,000 you thought, and now you're short. So it's important to know these things that if you are an employee and your tax category is with a W-2, then taxes are coming out, which that's fine. And then the alternative is an independent contractor. And that tax form is called a 1099. And if you're in that category, you are responsible for paying your own taxes. So that's great. A lot of people will say, you need to, like, that's what you should do. You should look for a job where you're an independent contractor because the money's better in your hands than everyone else's. You can earn interest off of that while you have it in the bank, then you pay your taxes and you do better, unless you don't realize that you have to pay your taxes and you don't set aside money for that and you're not saving the way you should be, and then suddenly you get hit with a horribly high tax bill because you've done okay your first year.
That's done it's probably due in 2 weeks when you spoke to the accountant.
And you haven't saved money to pay for it, and now you have to borrow from your, relatives and friends and so on. So you don't want to be in that position. So that's why this type of terminology, it may not be the most scintillating, but you really have to know about it before you start looking for a job.
So that's why if you are going to be, regardless, you should, and we always recommend, getting the proper legal advice, accounting advice. And you should, meet with an accountant, a CPA that understands the dental world, because it might be an accountant that you want to keep throughout your career. And if you are a 1099, they will set up quarterly estimated taxes for you so that you will pay every quarter, so that at the end of the year, in March, when you meet with your accountant and taxes are due April 15th, you don't have to come up with thousands upon thousands of dollars, which, just so you know, happened to each one of us our first years.
Independently.
Right. We didn't even know each other then, but we were new dentists and nobody told us.
It happens.
So that's, you will know also your tax status when you are hired. One of the other things that you will be faced with will be a contract or an agreement. And that is a legally binding document that you should not sign in a haste at time of interview. You should be given no less than 2 weeks. So if I interviewed you for a job and, I then said, all right, you're going to be hired, we, email you the contract and we say, okay, can you have this back to us within 2 weeks? That's pretty much the norm. Anyone that would ask you to sign on the spot is something that, we highly would really, that's a big red flag. That's probably someone we wouldn't recommend to work for, especially if they're doing something like that. You should get an attorney that is familiar with dental contracts, because everything, in every profession is different. So you might have a friend who's a real estate attorney, and he's like, yeah, I can look at that.
I'll look at it for you.
Right. And, they don't even charge you, and they're your friend. Thank you so much. And then you realize, after you've signed this contract 6 months later or a year later, let's say, when you actually want to, terminate, move on, you find that there's so much difficulty in that, or you didn't even understand the ramifications. So finding the right dental attorney that really, works with this. If you have to pay, that's fine. It's a worthwhile thing, because it's something that if you try to get out of it then later, will cost you so much more. So
you want to try to find
upfront
an attorney who's actually looked at dental employment contracts in the past. They're very specific, and they have some terms that I don't know if other employment attorneys would necessarily be so familiar with.
Right. Exactly. So one of the other things that, when we're getting ready to hopefully now get paid, dentistry and the way that you're compensated for, there's no one way for everybody. So there's certain words in this, also the terminology, that is extremely important that you're aware of this. So some of the terms, and I'll give little examples, are draw, collection, production, net production, a guarantee, salaries, and we already mentioned, the tax, your tax status. So one of the first things, especially in a lot of the corporate settings, you'll see, they'll give you a guaranteed salary, which especially for a new dentist, a starting dentist, that's a pretty nice piece of security, especially, just starting out. You won't feel that same, feeling of pressure to produce kind of thing, which you should never, have to feel that. But especially even when you're first beginning practice. So having some kind of guaranteed salary, if that's offered to you, is a pretty good benefit. Sometimes what you will see though is they might be paying you what we call a per diem. So let's say if you're working for 2 or 3 different dentists, so you work 2 days here, 2 days here, 2 days here, and a lot of us, that's how we start. You might be paid per day. And
that's what per diem means in Latin, for those of you who know Latin.
Per diem means. You might also get a position that says, we will pay you on a draw. What a draw means is, and this is probably the one that I don't recommend
the most,
is it sounds very persuasive, especially for a new grad, a first year starting dentist. And the way the draw would work, I would say to you, I'm going to give you a guaranteed $10,000 a month draw, but I'm going to do it against 30% collection. And every 3 months, we will sit down and we'll see how that works. So I paid you $30,000, 3 months. We then go over your collection. So yes, you produced all this dentistry, but out of the 30,000, you only collected, and it may not even be, you're not even responsible for collecting. You treat the patient goes up front. You collected $25,000, which is very good. What that means is you owe me, the employer, $5,000, but you don't have to give it back. But the following 3 months, you now don't have to produce 30,000. You have to produce 30. You have to collect 35,000.
It's like an advance.
Right.
It's basically an advance where, normally with an advance, you would have to go to your employer and say, hey, doc, I'm short this month. Could you spare an extra 5,000? I'll pay you back next month. That's what it is, except they're saying, here's what you get every month, but then we're going to figure it out at the end of the month. And I might owe you money, but you might owe me money. Who knows?
Right.
That's not as secure as it feels.
Exactly. So, I just don't like that kind of insecurity with my paycheck. The most common way that you'll see being paid throughout will be on collection. And what that means is, and on average, and especially in New York, you'll see 30% collection. West Coast might be a little bit less. But, here in New York, it's pretty much for a new, someone starting out, 30% of collection. And what that means is, as we said, you might produce $2,000 worth of dentistry, but the patient only paid, all the patients only paid $200. That means you get $60 for the day. So if you are working a job that is paying you on collection, you want to make sure, this is our recommendation because we're on your side, we want you to make sure that you get a guarantee per day, per diem. So that would mean you work at 30% collection, but when you come in for that day and you're working 8 to 5, whatever the hours might be, you're guaranteed $500 for the day. Or you could make more. So if your collections and everything else are above that, you make more. If they're less, you still make your guarantee of $500.
And it's important that that be per day, because
Right.
that it be figured out daily rather than, okay, you work 5 days a week, so that's 2,500, and now we figure it out for the week. But maybe one day you made 300 and you would have made the 500, and the next day, help me with the
Right. You
math
made
here.
800.
Yeah,
Right. So now they take the 800 from that day and they put it to the day you made the 200. And it's like, well, it still averages out to 500, 500.
instead of being
So,
the 500 for the day that you made 2 or 300,
right,
and then the 800, that would be 1,300 instead of 1,000. So
right.
that makes a big difference. You want the guarantee to be daily, calculated daily.
Doesn't mean you're going to get it, but you should be aware that you should at least try to ask for that.
Which is, we'll talk about that when we talk about negotiations. But speaking of our recommendations, we neglected to inform you that everything we're telling you is only our recommendations and our
That's right.
opinions, that for everything, this is our little caveat, for everything that before you accept a job offer or sign some sort of agreement or make a verbal agreement, you really need to speak to your trusted expert advisors in your life.
Yes. And we'll probably mention that 5 more times during the
I'm
presentation.
sure we will.
So, and then the last that if you could would be getting paid on production. And that was, that's really perfect, especially for the new grad, because you don't have to worry about collection.
That's like the golden bar, because it
Right.
means whatever you produce, you get whatever the agreed upon percentages for that, rather than with collection, as Dr. Studley said, what happens is it's up to the person who's doing the collecting.
Right.
So there might be a billing manager, or maybe it's just the front desk person who could be from hired last week, for all you know. You have no control over that. So of course, if you can get paid on production, that's the ideal situation.
Right. But, pretty much the norm these days, collection, 30%. You'll see more of the salaries in the corporate types of settings. Some of the corporates will give salary and, 30% of collection and all of those kinds of things as well. So, these are just all the different types that you should be aware of, so that when you're faced with this. So the big thing is, and I think we mentioned at the beginning, when to start looking. And
We get asked that question an awful lot. And yeah,
I think they should be starting now.
You should be starting now.
Because there's just so much out there. And, especially as a D1, right? So we both entered dental school. I wanted to be a pedo,
Right.
like I want peds, that's it. I hadn't even started dental school. I volunteered, in a hospital with the peds department. And I started dental school, and my first rotation through peds, it was like, I want pros,
Yeah. And when we say, when to start looking, we don't mean like, actually go for a job interview now. That would be very inappropriate unless you're in D4, and even that, you're not done yet. But what we mean is that your preparation should start now. So you need to start making some of the decisions we talked about earlier, and you need to start getting your ducks in a row in terms of applying and just even figuring out, everything that you want to do and have to do between now and getting a job, which is we'll talk about a lot of that tonight. But it takes time, and you should just start doing it, because some of the things you're going to do all along, like, for example, updating your CV, which we'll talk about in more depth later. Your CV should be updated every single time you have any kind of accomplishment or you've done something new. Otherwise, it becomes an onerous task at the end when you're swamped with boards and everything else that you have in D4. Hopefully happy celebrations too, but everything that you're so busy with, who wants to be working on your CV or your cover letter or anything like that? So all of these things are things that you can get started on now and build on over the course of 4 years if you're a D1. Imagine the strength of a document. We're not talking about the length, we're talking about the strength. You don't want to make it longer and longer and longer. You want to make it stronger and stronger.
So, starting to look now. and also kind of what we call it the wish list. All right. We all entered dental school wanting to, we had something in mind.
Mhm.
And now as we go through dental school, um, we might have something else in mind. And this is, this is the kind of practice that I think I want to be in. So you should start to put down your wish list. Also, using the residency program. That's why, first of all, for the constant learning, but also if, let's say, you're looking to relocate, move out of New York, um, you want to go, think you might like, Pennsylvania. Well, how about applying for residencies in those areas? Because that will give you a year to really figure out and say, you know what, I really would like to practice here. The living, the standards of life.
Mhm.
Um, I could see, really planting myself here. Or you could finish that year and say, this was great. I'm glad I had this experience. I'm going back to New York.
And another reason, if you think you want to relocate to Pennsylvania to go there for your residency program, is that you're going to start making the connections that you need to make. Your networking will begin in your residency program. Maybe your first employer will be one of your attendings. Who knows? So you want to be where you're going to be if you can.
Right. So, that's a good way because number one, you're learning, you're getting paid, and you're really getting to experience a lot of that, firsthand. So those really are, the times you should start as soon as, and then, don't think that, oh, I didn't really make my plans, now moving into residency. And then also, if you're going to do post grad. So it's important to really start to, make a plan. We made plans to get into dental school. Now we have to make like the next couple of plans. Um, and also to decide, now with the dental license, there's so many more states that you can work in. Um, one of the ADA has, their site for students. It's free. I speak I'm an ADA speaker. But they have so much, free information for the new grads, the just starting out. That you really should look into that site because it's really worthwhile for what you can find out. And if you're thinking, well, maybe I want to move to, North Carolina, right? We were talking to a former graduate of ours, right? He's in North Carolina. And he's been there 6 years and, ecstatic, raising his family, the house, building a practice, and he's just, enjoying the lifestyle there and working there. That really gives you all these different opportunities, to relocate. We have a great profession. And, as long as your license lets you practice in those states, you really might have opportunities where you could start a practice where the dentist to patient ratio, on average, you want to see one dentist per 1,500 patients. If you're a specialist, one specialist per 3,000 patients. There are, so many states out there that have unbelievable opportunity where you could, really have just phenomenal growth compared to being, let's say, in Manhattan, if you want out of here, kind of thing.
So in addition to figuring out where you're going to be before you can look for a job and thinking about whether or not you want to relocate or what's going to be the step in that direction, you really have to establish your goals. So you have to think about what kind of practice you want to be in. And by that, we do mean, of course, if you want to specialize, but we also mean like what kind of focus. Sometimes students say they want to be in, a high-end cosmetic practice, let's say, or maybe you really want a family type of practice or something where you're serving people that wouldn't otherwise be served. So it really depends what your goals are. And then, the type of practice that you want, you have to figure out what your goals are. And part of that is what are your economic goals? So then you can use some of that ADA information that's available, the demographic information that's available on the ADA website. And another piece that you need to factor in is what are your thoughts about your work-life balance? Is work the be all and end all for you? Is your career, are you completely career driven? Do you want to have some downtime? How much do you want to work? Do you want to work 6 days a week in the beginning when you have more energy than at the end, and wind down? Do you want to have a consistently even paced 4 days a week for your whole career? Like, these are some of the decisions that we're talking about that you have to think about, that are never too early to think about.
So when we start talking about, applying for these jobs, and how, will you stand out? It's, we talk about creating a brand. And I always say, I kind of created my brand, whether it is this or not, but, I got this kind of look, and I have a certain type of personality, and I present a certain kind of way. It's just sort of, my brand. And you can't copy somebody else's brand, because otherwise you're once again not going to stand out. But you have to think about it. It's like, there's actually a commercial, right, for Doritos. There's no name on it, and everybody still knows like what it is. And the commercial says we didn't have to put our name on it.
Uh-huh.
That, what a brand.
Right.
And, we'd have to try to do something like that, so that we leave that kind of impression that separates us. Because, if we were giving this in the lecture room, I'd say every single person in this room is really smart.
Right.
We all got into dental school. You all got into Columbia. Like, that was no easy feat. You worked very hard. You earned it. You deserve it. So now, how do you separate from each other? Why me? Why me?
I walked into a job interview, and one of my closest friends from dental school was sitting there for the same job interview. So that just illustrates that you're all going to be looking for the same job. So how do you distinguish yourself? And the best way is to what we call brand yourself. And how do you do that? You all went to the same school. You all had the same courses. You all got the same experiences, more or less. And that's where you really need to start thinking about what are your outstanding qualities as an individual. They may have nothing to do with dentistry, or maybe they do. We don't know. That's for you to figure out. That's part of why you need to start now, is how are you going to sell yourself? Maybe your outstanding quality is your ability to gain the trust of somebody very quickly. We don't know what it is, but whatever it is, you have to identify it for yourself. And there may be more than one. And then you have to start figuring out how to emphasize that in the 15 seconds that you get at an interview to make your first impression.
Right.
So
Sometimes
that's a
not
big
even
job.
15 seconds.
Yeah, that's a big job that you have ahead. So it takes time and a lot of intentional thought.
So one of the first things that's going to get you into that interview is your CV. And, you'll hear the word CV or resume. So resume is 1 to 2 pages on average. It's more bullets, highlights, quick kind of thing. The CV is the big piece. It's the big bragging piece. It really should showcase you, by also, first of all, putting the most relevant and the most recent stuff first. And I always say, because people, we used to review our students' CVs all the time. And, we're dentists, all of us. So we live in a millimeter kind of world. And to see a CV from a dentist where, the column isn't like exactly straight on the left-hand side drove me crazy.
It's a good time to let your school-bred OCD kick in.
Right. Because as dentists, well, we're not meeting you yet. Or let's say it's not even the dentist that's going to review the CVs that come in. It could be a human resources person, an office manager. And that might be one of the first things that they look for. I know I always do.
It's your first impression.
Right.
So it's like if you walked into your interview with a big stain on your shirt, you know, you want your CV is going to be, everything that you submit for this job is going to be a reflection of you.
Exactly.
If you want to show photos of some work that you've done, make sure it's meticulous. Have your most critical faculty evaluate it before you photograph it and show it to a practicing dentist, because they will probably enjoy critiquing it very much.
Yes. Yes, we've all been
Yeah.
there. So on that CV, it's also important to educate the person who's interviewing you and educate them more or less about the program, your dental curriculum at Columbia. Why you might be interviewing with somebody who, you know, went to BU, Tufts,
Or NYU.
or NYU, and they may not be familiar with your curriculum. And every dental school has its core curriculum, and it's kind of inbred to all of us. It really is the way we do certain things. So it's important that you educate that person interviewing you, because that will also highlight some of the things that, you know, if they don't do those things in the office, or you have an extreme competency in those kinds of procedures, you know, that might make them aware. I always use it as an example, like NYU, the students graduate class 1 certified in Invisalign. You know, I don't know if all the schools do that now. I know it's a lot more.
Mhm.
But at one time, it was one of the few schools, you know, that had that as part of the curriculum. So, you know, that was like a big plus, especially for a general practitioner that didn't do Invisalign. So, you know, any of these things that you could put up, you know, and really highlight, and as Dr. Peltz said, add it as you go on each year, which leads to the next. Please get your references, your letters of recommendation now. So if we have D1s and D2s that are listening, when you finish, you know, one of your classes, and, you know, you really, you know, meshed so well with one of the faculty members, and they had such really nice accolades to say about you, that's phenomenal. Ask for your letter of recommendation then, because that's when, you know, the biggest love is being felt. They have, you know, it's the freshest memory, because unfortunately, you know, 3 years may go by, you'll go back, and they've already had 3 more years of classes and also a bunch of stupendous students. So asking for those letters at the time, and not waiting till you're a D4 and now it's, you know, January or the summer, and, you know, everybody is being bombarded with, you know, letters of recommendation for residency programs, for job openings. The sooner that you can get professors to write these letters, the better the letters will be.
Right. So if you're asking for a letter of recommendation, first of all, you should ask your faculty, not just, sometimes students don't even
Just email
inform
it.
faculty that they're putting their name down, and then the faculty are surprised, which may or may not be, well, usually is not very good, because you're asking them to do work. So think about it. You're asking them to do extra work. So you better make sure that they're in a good mood about it. So the best way to make sure they're in a good mood, they know, you know, they want to help you. They do. But if you're the last one in the class to ask for a letter of recommendation, first of all, the faculty is a little bit grouchy by then about writing those letters. And secondly, they've run out of good words and creative ways to talk about students. So try to be the first one, not the last one, to get those requests in. And as Dr. Studley said, we can't emphasize it enough. When a faculty tells you that you've done a nice job with something, ask them for a letter right then, because it's fresh on their mind. And if you can't do that, or you didn't do that, and you're asking somebody to write a letter about, you know, a relationship that isn't exactly current, at least give them some frame of reference.
Right.
Like say, you know, I don't know if you remember, but in D3, I worked with you on such and such, and you told me whatever. Help them out, because
Right.
they've seen a lot of students, and what was so memorable for you may not have been as memorable for them.
So yes, giving them a little, this is why you loved me so much 2 years ago,
Hmm.
kind of thing. Um, Also, what you should include in your CV to also brand yourself, stand out, is include a photo gallery. And so you have your CV, and then after that, you have, really highly professional, OSHA compliant um, photographs, HIPAA compliant, everything compliant, so that now, when they read your CV, they go to the next section, and let's say the first section are photos of endo cases that you've done, a single canal, two canals, a molar. Then the next, you'll see photos of, some perio cases that you might have done if you've placed implants. Then you could show pros cases, um, an aesthetic case if you've done something like that. And I even would recommend, if you've done, let's say you had a crazy treatment plan that it took like 2 weeks to get this figured out, and you went to pros for it, you went to perio, you went to every department, and came up with this really huge comprehensive treatment plan. You did a write-up, you did wax ups that are just gorgeous. You present this to the patient, and then the patient says, wow, that's beautiful, doc, can you make me a partial? And you're like, oh, I went through this whole exercise. Well, this exercise, first of all, was a phenomenal learning experience, but I would photograph that. And that is an unbelievable talking point at an interview. And it's something that you could also direct them to actually see the visual of this. And that, yes, I didn't get to do all of these things, but here's my wax up, here's the treatment plans I went through. Pretty, I would be impressed with that.
Just make sure you know your stuff.
Right, exactly, because they will challenge you.
Yeah.
And then lastly, if you really, really want to stand out a step above, you could do a web-based type of CV. So you get your own website, and with your beautiful picture, with a nice clean coat, and on there you have different drop downs. So you will see references. And on this, because I've had students that have done this, there's a video of me presenting about them. Instead of writing a letter of recommendation, I'm talking about the student. And then there's, a couple of other professors that are doing the same thing. And then you go to his other drop-down tabs, and you'll see, perio, pros, and you see all of these cases. I will tell you, students that have done that, I would say they've had their pick of where they wanted to work.
Well, imagine how impressive that is.
Because you're just showing.
You're getting all these paper CVs.
Right.
They all look the same. The names are a little different. You don't know anything about any of the people. And then there's this web-based CV where you're getting video recommendations. Maybe you could videotape your own personal statement. Imagine how different that is to the person who's looking at all these things all day long. So be creative within, reason. Be creative while being professional, and anything you can think of that will make you stand out is how you brand yourself.
So
at this moment, I think it's a good time to for us to treat you to a cup of coffee. So if you just go to the chat box and fill in the form in the chat box, then we will email you a $5 gift card for Starbucks. And we really love the thought of you all having a cup of coffee on us.
So as we start to wind down, so how are we going to find these jobs, Dr. Peltz? So, everybody's aware, we mentioned Doccupation's just one of the venues. There's Indeed, there's Craigslist. It's worth trying everything in order to get this out. Starting from some of the old-fashioned ways that we both, still kind of recommend. We each wanted to practice in a certain zip code, and we went into that zip code. We found all the dentists that are in that zip code, and we actually did snail mail.
Snail mail, and to
Right.
find these, you had to use something called the Yellow Pages. I don't know if you're
We're
familiar
not
with
that
that.
old, but yes.
Yeah, there was no internet.
There was no Google
We're not
search.
that old, but there was no internet.
Right.
So
Back in the day.
whatever you want to call that. Anyway, yeah, it was tiresome and tedious work, but we sent letters to dentists in a zip code. And then we followed up 2 weeks later. You could easily do this now. It's so easy.
Right, through emails as well.
And then we
got our
followed up
jobs.
with phone calls. And then I had one case where I just showed up because I really liked the location and I thought it might be a good fit for me. And I wound up getting a job there. So
And
try
these were not
anything.
dentists that were looking at the time.
Right.
We just picked an area.
Random
and
letters.
We just did a mailing.
And as a
kind of thing.
practicing dentist, I've received those
Yeah.
letters over the years
Yes.
too. So people still do that. But the bottom line is, and the message is that in order to find a job, you're going to do anything and everything. So one of the things you can start doing now is things like this. You're attending a group meeting. So you're meeting your colleagues, and your colleagues are going to know other colleagues. So your senior colleagues, by the time you graduate, they've been in the workforce for a few years. My first employer was only 5 years more out than I was. So you never know if you're talking to a future employer right now. So that's your first step, is start going to meetings, start networking as much as you can in this more limited environment. You all have creative ways to get together and talk to each other, and you need to start doing that even more.
And once we can start to actually go out and start socializing, you should really start attending any of the local dental societies. The same thing if you are looking to, let's say, relocate, just go to another state. You should attend those state local dental societies. There are so many meetings. They have all these new dentist kind of meetings, but then they also have all these general meetings that everybody is invited to. And, we speak at a lot of them, and we're also members. And the last time we were at New York, right, I saw like 3 of my former graduates who were all there. They were all dressed. They had an envelope filled with CVs, and they were going to hand out their CVs, and they weren't leaving this meeting until they handed out all these CVs. And these were not the dentists that were like, with signs, "I'm looking to hire." No, these were all dentists in all different age groups. And especially when you're amongst, you're all in that same group, the camaraderie, and everybody is willing to listen and help. Because I always say every dentist knows about 100,000 other dentists.
Mm-hmm. And
it's
also
a
go
good
to
network.
the Columbia, go to your school's alumni events, because everybody there is interested in the current dental students, and they want to help.
Right, and get a list of the alumni, because you will be a member of, and once again, do a blast out to them. I will tell you, we all love to hire our own.
Mm-hmm.
It's that camaraderie just goes through even once you graduate. So using that to also get some doors open is a great tool. When you do, start looking for that, we had mentioned, research these jobs. There's pretty much not a dental practice that's out there, I don't know, that doesn't have a website.
Mm-hmm.
And you could find out so much information from the website. First of all,
look at the patient reviews.
Right.
See how the patients feel about the dentist, the owner.
Right. So look also, procedures that they do. So let's say if, I had a dental office and you're interviewing with me and you see, well, you know what, I'm only open 1 night a week. And, I don't do endo, I refer that out. I don't do, oral surgery, all these different things. Well, now, you're there for an interview and you see that, you know what, doc, I see you're closed. You're only open 1 night a week. I would work the, 2 nights a week at least.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden now, because you did your homework, you're creating opportunity for me, the employer. And when you turn that table, you end up kind of controlling, because now you might even notice as the employer, I might lean in a little bit because now you made me interested in you.
Because every employer who is looking for an associate has a need that needs to be filled. And if you can figure out what that need is and talk during the interview about how you are going to fill that need, it's highly likely that you'll be a contender for that job. And something for you to bear in mind, because when you graduate and you're looking for a job, it may be hard for you to understand how much value you have. So you really need to understand that a dentist who's looking for an associate needs help. And you are a person who is there to help. You have a lot of value. You're a dentist. You can do the procedures that dentist can do too. And you're there to provide relief. So make it clear that that's how you view that job. And I think you'll find some very interested employers. And you also want to make sure that you negotiate for yourself. So you have one opportunity, and only one, as far as we're concerned, to get what you want out of the terms of this job. So negotiating for yourself could be very hard, especially, as I said, your self-esteem may not be that high in this regard right now. It's your first job as a dentist. So one clue is that when you get whatever you have, and you've had an interview, you've had your meeting with your employer, you've had a conversation. Either maybe you've been presented with a contract at this point or some sort of agreement, or maybe it was just a verbal conversation. You can follow up with an email that says, "Dear Dr. So-and-so, it was such a pleasure to meet you today. Concerning our discussion about my salary," or whatever it is, you can put it in an email, word it very nicely, get one of your expert advisors to review it before you send it, make sure there aren't any typos or anything like that. And you can go back and forth via email for a while at least.
Right, because it still gives you a little bit of strength, because this is a new thing for especially a new dentist, and you don't want to feel intimidated, but at least behind the email you don't have to feel that intimidation. Have questions prepared for the interview. So at the end of the interview, the interviewer says to you, "Doctor, do you have any questions?" If you reply, "No, I'm good." So that, for me, that was always good for me, because I knew that I wasn't going to hire that person. Because if, here I am looking to give you a job that's going to help you, earn your income. And it's not that important that you don't have like a ton of questions. So have questions prepared, put them on your phone. When it gets to that point and there are questions, have a few of them already on there. It will show the person interviewing you that you are really interested, in that. So hopefully that you actually get to that point.
And finally, you may be asked to go on a working interview. And what that means is that you will be asked to do dentistry in the dentist's office, so that they can see how you practice. And that's fair. Why should they hire you without knowing that? But before you go, you have to have a license in the state, and you have to have a malpractice insurance policy.
Right. So we're not, as dentists, if you work for me, my malpractice covers me. It doesn't cover you, unless I have something else. But your malpractice is attached to you. So if I have an associate working for me, you are not covered. The associate is not covered under the owner dentist malpractice policy. You have to have your own malpractice insurance. And in order to get malpractice insurance, you have to have your own license. So even if you are in residency and, well, I have malpractice through the hospital, that only covers you while you're in the hospital, as a resident. Once you do anything outside and you don't have a license and you don't have malpractice, you're liable. So big red flag. If an employer, you should say to you, no, come in, you could work under mine. I'm just going to give you like 2 prophies. You know, that's all. It still doesn't matter if you're, flossing the patient's teeth. You're not allowed to do that. You're an unlicensed practitioner, and you're not even a hygienist. All right. So not a good way to start. As we start to finish off, certain requirements that you will need in order to get started with practicing. And we talked about, you have to have a license number, your NPI number. You also have to check the states. Certain states have different requirements for certain courses that you have to take as well. So always make sure you check with your state dental society to get everything that you need. You should also have disability insurance.
I'm going to interrupt and just remind you all that if you have any insurance related questions, you can reach Dr. Studley at insurance@drericstudley.com. You can consider him one of your trusted advisors, and we do hope you will use that resource in the future.
And you should also join your dental associations, and as Dr. Peltz mentioned, you're a fellow?
I am a master in the Academy
of General Dentistry. So, that's something, because you have to really keep up with it's CE credits on, times a gazillion.
And just as a little FYI for those of you who are going to do a GPR, if you join the Academy of General Dentistry before you do, you get points for that. So there are goals to get in the Academy of General Dentistry. It's a very, very good organization, and we highly recommend that you join that and the ADA. So I would like to announce the winner of our $50 Amazon gift card. And please forgive me if I don't get this right, but it is Surisadai Acquit, or Acquit. So Surisadai, would you please, if you're here, can you just type in yippee, I won, so that we know you're here. And
spelling doesn't count.
Hi, I'm here. Thank you.
That works. That's easier. And we really did enjoy presenting to you very, very much. And we would be happy to come back if you have any other topics you would like us to talk about. We can pretty much talk about anything.
And if you do have questions moving forward, please email us.
Feel free. You can email info@drpatients.com, and we will be following up with you with answers to your questions. We appreciate those who submitted them in advance. We hope we answered a lot of them tonight, and anything we didn't answer, we will answer in the future. So thank you and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Oh, our pleasure.
Thanks. We had fun.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for the gift card and the coffee.
You're welcome.
Use it well.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
You too.